Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by the great folks over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away, regardless of what time of day the game is. They've got it on over at Greta. We were there for the watch party. People heard about it, and you're going to have to hear about the next one if you don't show up. So make sure you show up to the next one. Details on that to come soon. Just minutes from the arena. Come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for with weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. We didn't talk about me slinging it on the football machine there. Did you?
Excuse me. Funny of you, by the way. You love to take your victory laps, which you were just about to take again. I can't believe I forgot to talk about how I beat you decisively there in that arcade basketball in that rematch.
All right.
Hold on a second. Stop. You didn't bring it up, and I'm gonna call you out for this because I guarantee if you won, you would not have forgotten about that.
Actually, the show outline that I made on Friday said first topic was quads beats Harmon in basketball, but I deleted it.
Yeah, so I got to call you out for that.
Also, decisively, you beat me by one shot. It was 200 to 202.
Win's a win.
That's the other thing. Hey, you won fair and square. We posted on Twitter. I don't know what more you want from me, but anyways.
I mean, you didn't post that on Twitter.
No, it was against my will. The person who posted it has been fired from Canucks Army. But in all seriousness, like the Greta basketball machine, you go for a long time. You get your money's worth on that Greta basketball machine. It's like 1 minute, 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and you're just hucking those things up. The fact we got to 200 points, like that means we put in, like I put 100 shots down and you put 101 shots down. Like that's the math on it, right?
I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention, but I'll also say this, so my shoulder's been really sore.
Oh, here we go.
No, hold on. Last week, I almost considered not playing because of like my shoulder's been kind of messed up, my shooting shoulder. But I was like, okay, if I pull out and say, oh, I can't play the arcade basketball, like because my shoulder's sore, I just come off like a complete wimp. So I'm like, all right, gotta play. And remember, I was dusting you really early. Like it wasn't close, but as the game went on and on and on, that's where like my shoulder just like couldn't go anymore, and you made it close. But
I heated up.
You're lucky it got close. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Whatever. Jacob was watching. I think it was close the whole way through. Technical producer Jacob Boeser. Okay, are you ready to move on, Harm? Or did you have anything else you wanted to say? Okay.
I still can't get over like you were about to start taking a victory lap over your mediocre football performance. Like that was very mediocre. I'm not gonna say or claim I could have done better because football's not my sport, but to say you were slinging it is quite the exaggeration.
Will you give me tossing it? Do you recall in the West Edmonton Mall arcade when I was playing that football machine? Yeah. And you posted on Twitter and tagged Farhan. Farhan's never looked at me the same since then. But let's get going. Going. We got a game day here. Game day edition of Canucks Conversation. The Canucks are in Chicago to take on those Blackhawks, and JT Miller is a game time decision. Harmon, I'm thinking he's going to play. I'll just come out and say that right now. I think it takes a lot to, much like you with arcade basketball, it takes a lot to keep JT Miller from game time. I think JT Miller is going to play tonight. There's your lineup. A look at your lineup. It looks like the Canucks are going to go with DeBrusk, Miller, Boeser on the top line, and really just keep their lines the same. Daniel Sprong on that fourth line with Nils Amon and P.S. Suter.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Miller's pain tolerance is pretty insane. I remember one of my first couple of seasons covering the team. I was on the road in another city. It was the second leg of a back-to-back, and I was sitting next to a Canucks executive. At the time, nobody knew that Miller was banged up, and I was just kind of casually having a conversation with this exec, and he told me, yeah, Miller's such a warrior. People don't even know, but apparently he had blocked a shot the previous game, and his foot was kind of mangled. Nobody on Canucks Twitter knew about it, and it wasn't something that I was able to report. It was kind of like an off-the-record just type conversation. But he played in that game and played close to 100%. Like he didn't look like he was hobbled or hampered. And just like those little anecdotes and stories that show, like right now we know he's clearly banged up. He's clearly kind of hobbled, playing through something. But for Miller to be as durable as he has, it's not that he's been that much luckier than other players. His pain tolerance is just kind of insane that he's battling through things when we don't even know about it necessarily. And so if there's any chance that he thinks he can play and be effective, he's 100% going to do it.
That's my point. Like, that's my point, is he's going to play. And that's a great story that you just told. So a little exclusive here on Canucks Convo. So JT Miller, we expect him to play on the back end, looking about the same. Erik Brannstrom expected to skate with Vinny Desharnais. We said it. Saturday was Vinny Desharnais' best game in Canucks colors. Can he build on that? That's my big question for him tonight. Speaking of the blue line, we know Erik Brannstrom's on his trajectory to be the next Quinn Hughes, Gustav Forsling, put whoever you want there. But Carson Soucy, like tonight, in my mind, eyes are going to be on Carson Soucy. Like, you need Carson Soucy to step up and start to play like the defenseman that we know he can be.
Yeah, I thought that pair was a bit better against Philly. I think it's interesting too, because with Soucy, I believe he's the type of defenseman where if the Canucks eventually go out and are able to find a top 4 right-handed puck mover for him to play with, then all of a sudden I think Soucy will look a lot more comfortable on that second pair, because he won't be asked to do as much from a puck moving perspective, and he can sort of just settle into playing his simple, effective role as just a long, physical, hard to play against defenseman who's kind of responsible in his own end. So part of it too is just that he doesn't have a top 4 caliber partner. Like, Myers is a great story, but ideally I think we all know that he's probably a number 5 on a good team and could be the driver of his own third pair. But now that he's sort of in the second pair role, and don't forget, like, that Soucy pair usually gets the toughest matchups on that blue line. It's not the Quinn Hughes pair, typically, when you look at the data from last year, for example. So as much as Soucy has had a less than stellar start to the season, I'm trying to be balanced and critical and not dump on him too much, because he's being asked to do a lot as like relative to his talent and ability level.
Jesse C in the chat even pointing out, isn't Soucy only paid 3.5? Are we supposed to expect him to be a number 3? That's the thing. That was the bet the Canucks made when they signed him, and it looked like a good bet last season. I'm not saying it doesn't this season. I'm just saying that's why we're expecting Soucy to be a legit number 3, because he was undoubtedly the Canucks' third best defenseman last season.
I mean, ideally he'd be your 4, right? He can stretch and be your 3, but if he's going to be your 3, like, you need an equally talented guy to be your 4.
Yep. Rasmus Anderson. Go get Rasmus Anderson. I mean, he can be your 3.
That would be, I mean, Anderson might even be, I don't want to say better than Hronek,
said it. Yeah.
But like, they're very similar in terms of overall ability and talent. And yeah, I mean, again, that's sort of a pipe dream. We'll see if Calgary is even open to the idea of it.
That's what everyone said about my Lindholm when I said go get Elias Lindholm. I didn't know how they were going to do it. I just said go get him, and they did it. So I'm saying it now, same time of year. Go get Rasmus Anderson. My prediction, they're going to go get Rasmus Anderson. Don't ask me what it's going to cost, but they're going to get Rasmus Anderson. And like Hronek, the Canucks are going to surprise everybody by trading for Rasmus Anderson. Other notes from tonight, Kevin Lankinen starts in goal. Harman, this one, we kind of touched on it yesterday about who we would start. It was the subject of our poll question. I'm not surprised at all that they're going with Lankinen. Like, let's be frank here. It gives them the best chance to win tonight. It gives them the best chance to finish up a road trip with awesome vibes, a 3-game win streak. Kevin Lankinen gives them their best chance to do that. And I think when you break it down like that, it's simple. Yes, there is some risk that it's a young goaltender that is going to have his confidence really tested here. And the next time he plays, you would assume would be against one of Carolina or New Jersey, which would be a tougher opponent than the Chicago Blackhawks. So to me, like, I looked at this as a potentially get right game for Shelovs. But on the flip side of that, if Shelovs comes out and, poops the bed, what then? Like, where's his confidence after that? And again, if that happens, you're definitely not going to him for anything other than like the second of a back-to-back, or when Kevin Lankinen is really just too tired to go. That's the only time you'd be going to Shelovs, if he came out and had another stinker against Chicago. I looked at it through that lens. I wrote about it over at CanucksArmy.com, but at the end of the day, not really surprised. And I do think it's the right call to go with Kevin Lankinen tonight.
Absolutely. When a goaltender is on this type of heater, you ride that hot hand, you take advantage of it as much as possible, because you don't know how long that stretch is going to last, especially because the schedule is a bit spread out right now. There aren't a ton of games. So he's got plenty of opportunity to be well rested enough. It's not like you're worried about, is he playing too much? Or are you going to drive him into the ground? Is that going to affect his performance? He's well rested. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body right now. Even in like as far as training camp and preseason, didn't have too heavy of a workload. Plus, Lankinen from earlier in his career in Chicago, ironically enough, has experience playing a higher volume of games and being more than just a traditional backup. So it's not like this is a foreign experience for him as far as being a 1A and taking on a lot of games. So take advantage of it as long as you can. And you deal with the risk of Shilov's potentially of whether he gets back on track or not, what effect it has on his confidence. You can deal with that down the road. Especially, I think it's less of a concern now that Shilov's overall played well against Tampa. Like his performance was right around expected when you looked at the chances that the Canucks surrendered. They were fortunate to only be in a 1-0 deficit after that first period. Of course, after you didn't love the Braden Point goal, but overall he was average against the Lightning, which is all you can kind of expect from such a young goaltender who had a rough start in the season opener.
Box Van Gogh, I've been making this point for a while now. He said, I don't know if you can switch goalies when a guy gets a shutout. Like, that's the thing. That's always the caveat I put on it is unless this player gets a shutout, you go to the other guy when I'm talking about the Canucks goal.
Also, just
that's what happened.
Early points is much as possible, right? You don't want to take that for granted or get too cute with it, because the last thing you want to do is be dropping games to teams like Chicago and putting yourself in a position where you're not even having to play catch up, but okay, there's a little bit more pressure as the schedule progresses into November and December. You want to give yourself some breathing room and flexibility so that later in the season, you don't even have to, let's say, play Quinn Hughes a ton of minutes. You don't have to see him pushing closer to 30 minutes. You can reduce the wear and tear and workload on the likes of Miller and Pettersson and Boeser, compared to if this team ends up in a spot where a playoff spot is always like it's within reach, but it's not fully safe. Then that's the territory where coaches will often fall into overplaying some of their top guys. Like look at Colorado, for example. I think it was a couple of seasons ago that they didn't have the best start, and they were also banged up with injuries. So you looked at their top guys like McKinnon, Makar, Taves, Rantanen. Like Rantanen had games where he was averaging 24, 25 minutes a night, and then you wonder why the Avs lost to the Kraken in the first round of the playoffs. It's like their best players just ran out of gas because they didn't build enough of a strong start early in the season. Similar to what they're doing this season over there in Colorado. 32 teams in action, 32 teams in action tonight. Ty David in the chat asked, which games are you most interested in? Everybody knows my answer, but what's your answer, Harm? Looking through it right now, Lightning Devils will be fun. I'll give you one. I'll give you mine. Penguins at Flames. Couple reasons. Penguins have to play. On. Oh, what are you talking about? First of all, Nazem Kadri. You thought I was going to say Sidney Crosby. Nazem Kadri. You got all those guys on the wagon. Flames. The Flames don't have a regulation loss yet. I'm all in on the Flames. I'm all in on the Flames being a potential wildcard team. First in the Pacific right now. This might be Canucks conversation, and in most years, people won't want to hear me talking about the Flames. But when it's a ragtag group of guys like that and expectations are low, I can get behind that. I can get behind the Flames right now. Sure, but you cannot tell me that they're a fun, entertaining team to watch. What are you talking about? Yeah, they have no. Come on. They don't have enough star power for 32 teams are in action, and you're telling me your number one priority is to watch the Calgary Flames. They work hard. And I like that. Yeah, I like watching. That's not that fun to watch. I want to see chaos. I want to see star players. I want to see offense. You're gonna see chaos because the team's not supposed to be that good. Okay, if you want to watch a couple of teams that are like middle of the pack but are actually fun and exciting, like give me Utah and Ottawa. Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Like that'll be, you got young talent on both teams. Ottawa, both teams are also kind of a work in progress defensively. Like Flames, Penguins. When are they really? When are they getting Allmark back? Is he back yet? I don't know. No, he's not back yet. Still sidelined. Don't know a time return. We'll see. I thought he was day to day. This injury report brought to you by Travis Green. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I'm all in on the Flames. That's gonna be our honestly for all these matchups. None of them are that exciting. Like I'm looking Flames, through it. Penguins, like, Leafs, Blue Jackets is whatever. Jets, Blues won't be bad. Hurricanes, Oilers is pretty decent. I guess, you know what? Boston, Nashville, just from a perspective of Nashville's 0-5, and are they really going to drop a 6th straight game? And what could that mean for them after they spent all that money in free agency? Like, I think that could be dramatic. So there are a few interesting games, but considering every team is playing, it doesn't feel like there's a must watch. Like, this is the game to see.
And first of all, Frozen Frenzy is happening on a Tuesday night. We're not going to get to watch it in Canada. Let's leave that aside. But just if you're trying to grow the game and all that, like, Leafs, Blue Jackets, like, again, I know we're not going to get going on the Leafs here, but like I could think of 4 better opponents for the Leafs on like a marquee night like this. It's like the NHL schedule makers made the schedule and they're like, okay, now we have to pick a night for Frozen Frenzy. And like, oh, everybody's playing this night, but they didn't like think about Frozen Frenzy before they made the schedule. I know they did. So you're right. It is a little bit of a disappointing slate for this big marquee night for the league. But I'll tell you what I'll be watching is Canucks versus Blackhawks. Can we get a look at Chicago's lines here, please, Jacob? The Chicago Blackhawks, Conor Bard has Teuvo Teravainen on his line. They've been great. That duo's been really good. Nick Foligno leads them in goals. Captain Nick Foligno. I like that top line for Chicago, but looking out throughout the rest of their lineup, that second line to me, Harm, just looks like it has chance to catch fire with Andreas Athanasiou, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Taylor Hall. Like, that's a line to me that just at some point in the season, those guys are going to go on an absolute heater. I'm just calling it now.
Well, Athanasiou is a new addition on that line because Philip Kurashev, who scored 54 points in 75 games on Bedard's wing last year, he's a natural center, so they moved him back to the middle, and it hasn't been the best start for that second line. I believe he's only got 1 goal and 0 assists in 6 games. He's actually a healthy scratch, which is a bit of a controversial decision over in Chicago, because I actually did a piece looking at different player experiments around the NHL right now. So I watched a lot of that second line in Chicago because I wanted to see how Kurashev was looking at 2C. He was okay. It's not that he looked bad or out of place. And in fact, the Blackhawks were around break even in controlling shots and chances, but the offense just wasn't there because they were finishing less than 3% of their shots. They were kind of snake bitten. And I think Kurashev got punished a little bit too harshly for that. And when I look at this line, so Athanasiou with the speed, I don't think a lot of Hawks fans are excited about, he's in the 2C slot, because they know that he's not a top 6 caliber player, especially not a top 6 caliber centerman. But can he catch lightning in a bottle maybe for a game? I don't know. Can he give them a spark? I guess there's a chance, but there's also an equal probability that Athanasiou is just not the answer, and that line, especially given that it's going to be their first game together, could be somewhat of a train wreck. Like, it's really hard to predict what they're going to look. They could have a good night, or they could just really struggle to build chemistry and be a complete liability for them. I sort of lean towards the latter. I don't have the highest hopes for Athanasiou on that second line. I think Taylor Hall is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them.
Yep. Tyler Bertuzzi as well. I like me some Tyler Bertuzzi. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Ilya Mikheyev. I think I'm wrong about him getting over 40 points this season.
Yeah, 0 and 6.
He played with Conor Bard for the first game. That lasted 2 periods. By my, like, what I'm looking at, he hasn't played with him since. Like, they played him for those 2 periods. He hasn't seen a second of 5, not even a line change at the same time. He hasn't seen a second of 5-on-5 ice time with Conor Bard since that first game. I don't think Ilya Mikheyev, who's got 0 points through 6 games, is going to hit 40 this year.
Well, when I mentioned how Hawks fans were a little bit upset that Kurashev is a healthy scratch, Mikheyev is one of the players that they brought up as like, hey, Kurashev is actually pretty decent. He scored 54 points. Of course, that was with Bedard last year, but Mikheyev has looked really ineffective, invisible for them, and I think some fans wanted to see him taken out of the lineup instead.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps. For the first time in the last 4 seasons, Vancouver Whitecaps FC are MLS Cup playoff bound. The Caps are set to begin their playoff campaign in the Western Conference wildcard match against their Cascadia rival Portland Timbers this Wednesday at Providence Park in Portland, Oregon. Kickoff will be at 7:30 p.m. live for free on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV and broadcast on TSN. The winner of the wildcard match will advance to round 1 and take on top seed LAFC in a best-of-3 series between October 26th and November 10th. Playoff tickets for round 1 will be on sale shortly if the Whitecaps FC win their wildcard match. As listeners of Canucks Conversation, you can get in on the exclusive pre-sale by texting CAPS to 604-305-4530. For more information, visit whitecapsfc.com. Okay, Harm, before we get to anyone else, and this is kind of an anyone else thing, in light of Tyler Myers playing his 1,000th career game, we thought it'd be fun to look around at which Canucks on the current roster Canucks, we're not talking about Luke Shen, who also hit 1,000 games very recently, current roster Canucks that will hit 1,000 games in their career. Myers, of course, is the 399th NHL player to do it. It's no easy feat. I was looking through the list of players who played for the Canucks. There's a lot of players that aren't thought of as Canucks who have played 1,000 games. Obviously, Mark Messier is one of them. More on him later in the show. But looking at this current roster, to me, like it feels like JT Miller is going to be the next one. Obviously, he's at 800 something games. He just played his 800th at the end of last season. Or excuse me, at the start of this season, he played his 800th game. It feels like JT Miller's going to be the next player. But beyond that, is there anyone else that really sticks out to you as a guy who's going to play 1,000 games?
Yeah, Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson stand out as really high probability for that. Hughes especially because he's so rare in terms of what he can do as a defenseman. Pretty durable, doesn't take a lot of contact. The way that he could skate and avoid hits as a smaller defenseman, there's just and for him too, he's not dishing out a lot of hits. So I feel like he's the type of player that is going to age really well, be really, really effective pretty deep into his 30s. So I feel like Hughes is I don't want to call anyone close to a lock because I just don't want to jinx anything. But, I think he has a strong chance. And Pettersson, I mean, when he's at his best, he is a face of the franchise type player. And I know he's struggled so far this season, but a centerman of his caliber, they're so rare to find. Even last season, when we talk about him having a down year, in a down year, Pettersson was still top 10 among all centers in scoring. So you can have your concerns about his contract or not, but he's going to be in this league for a really, really long time.
Okay, here's one to throw out to you. Brock Boeser. I've thought about Brock Boeser. Obviously, he's missed some time. He's had some shorter seasons, but that being said, he did play his first full NHL season at 20. If you look historically, like that gives you an advantage. A guy that comes to mind for me is like Alex Burrows, who obviously didn't play a full season his first year in the NHL, but like his first full season in the NHL came when he was 25 years old. Burrows finished his career with 913 games played, and that wasn't for a lack of availability once he played. Like, he played in many seasons that were nearly full seasons. Obviously, you've got a lockout in there as well, but like, he played a lot of games during his career. So Brock Boeser's one that is kind of one that I'm discussing a little bit because he started his career young, like he started at age 20, but he's faced some injuries, and I lean toward yes, but I'm also hesitant because, like, I look at a guy like Alex Burrows where how long is Brock Boeser going to play? Is Brock Boeser going to do like a Justin Williams thing? Is Brock Boeser going to be playing? Jacob and I were talking about this before the show. Is Brock Boeser going to be playing for the Minnesota Wild when he's like 37 years old and just like one of the fellas? He's out there with the Wild, his hometown team. I don't know. I mean, that's obviously up to Brock, and of course, with his health, if that holds up. But Brock Boeser's the one that I think is the real coin flip, where it's like, okay, is he going to reach 1,000? Is he not going to reach 1,000? I also think it's worth mentioning that he has evolved his game to be a more well-rounded player, that he's not just cooked and not going to be able to play in the league as soon as he can't score goals or can't put up points.
Yeah, there are three guys that I identified in that like coin flip type range. Brock's one of them. The other was Hronek and DeBrusk. With Brock, I think he can get there, right? Because I was sort of doing the math based off, he's almost at 500 games played now. And if you assume he averages around 70 games per season, he'd need to play through till about 33, 34 years old, which I think is doable. Now, it's not a guarantee because some guys, when they hit 30, 31, 32, they're just their foot speed just really takes a hit, and Brock especially is not the most fleet of foot, so that's a concern with him, especially if he ends up getting the type of lower body injury that would put extra stress on that part of his game. But like you said, because he's evolved his game, because he's no longer just a one-dimensional scorer, I think he's a smart enough player that he can adapt and still be effective through his early 30s. So I think he's got a decent chance. And I'm looking at Hronek as well. He's 26 years old and has nearly 400 games under his belt. Plus, how rare it is. Like, there's a shortage of quality right-handed defensemen in the NHL. Like, just look around the league, and if a team has blue line issues, it's usually on the right side, right? Like, I've brought this up before, but Vancouver, Edmonton, Dallas, like, the list just goes on and on. So I feel like Hronek is always going to be the type of player that even beyond this contract, like, he could play another year, 2 years, 3 years, so long as he can stay relatively healthy, just because there's such a shortage of quality RD.
And DeBrusk, what are your thoughts? Jake DeBrusk, is he going to reach 1,000 points? Or, 1,000 games?
I think he's the least likely. He'd need to if he plays 70 games per season, he'd need 8 years, 7.5. But of course, he'd have to play into that 8th season to do it. Yeah, that's more of a that's another coin flip. But I'd say I'd be less confident in him reaching 1,000 compared to Hronek and Boeser. But again, he's also a versatile player. Where could he evolve into, let's say, later in his career, he maybe loses his hands or isn't as dynamic offensively? Could he evolve into like a bottom 6 checking line role, just using his pace, being a guy that kills penalties and is heavy along the walls? Like, I could see it. I see somebody.
Nils Höglander?
I don't think so.
I don't think Höglander.
So, like, because like, by my math, and maybe I did it wrong, but he'd need to play 11 more seasons, play until he's about 35. Like, that's like, again, I think it's because he entered the league. He entered the league early, but because he became a healthy scratch at times, because he spent some time in the American League, like, he hasn't had the quickest start to his NHL career. Like, Hronek got a really quick start to his NHL career.
COVID
as like
season
a full time.
COVID season was Höglander's debut season.
So just a lot of factors, I think, have hindered Höglander's ability to get a lot of games under his belt. Like, I'm looking at it now. I did the math on this earlier. So he's going to turn 24 in a couple of months, and he hasn't even hit 250 games. So I wouldn't bet on him reaching 1,000.
All right. I like it. Jonathan Leckermacki getting some love in the chat, and this one from Bugs Cheese in the chat. He said, I see Brock possibly on a Tyler Toffoli style trajectory. I think 1,000 isn't out of the question. Tyler Toffoli off to a good start in San Jose. All right, Harm, that was fun. Is there anyone else or anything else that you wanted to say about the 1,000 game watch?
Nope.
All right, let's get to anyone else, which, if you haven't heard, is brought to you by our new friends over at White Spot. At White Spot, they're all about enjoying great, comforting food and spending quality time with loved ones. With the new comfort menu, White Spot is focusing on cozy, satisfying flavors that are perfect to enjoy with family. Available now and developed by the White Spot culinary team, the comfort menu is filled with warm, indulgent dishes designed to make you feel right at home. The new menu features mouth-watering new additions like mini Yorkies, the braised beef burger, the home-style pot roast, and backed by popular demand, the iconic chicken pot pie. Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal perfect for the season. Visit your local White Spot today. We talked a lot about the car hop service yesterday. I didn't get it yesterday, but I am going to this week. And we talked about it off air afterwards. Maybe some content from the White Spot car hop. We'll do Jeff Patterson, who joins the show tomorrow. We'll have him in the back seat. Get another tray across the back seat, and we'll do an interview while eating our. I gotta try that braised beef burger.
You think J-Pat's gonna be thrilled with being relegated to the back?
Well, I mean, he got shotgun during the trip to Penticton. I think I told the story on the show, but for those that don't know, I offered Harmon $20 to yell shotgun as soon as we saw the car in front of J-Pat, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So,
no.
Anyways, okay, let's get to anyone else. We got a lot in the chat here. Ty David was asking about the matchups tonight. We already kind of dove into that one. Let's get to Jesse C here. He said, with hindsight knowledge of how well Garland drives play and Dylan Guenther's contract, would you do the trade over again right now? You don't do that trade over again.
No chance.
But let's alter the question a bit. how would you alter the trade? Like, we have hindsight, obviously, but at the time, like, was anybody really saying like, oh, what a slam dunk for the Canucks? Because in hindsight, like, it should have been maybe not the Canucks that were getting assets because they dumped those contracts, but like they were taking on OEL. The first round pick that turned into Dylan Gunther just shouldn't have been a part of that trade. I think if you redo the trade, I think that's how you do it. Is you can have all the bad contracts, but we're taking Conor Garland and we're taking Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the reason of you don't want to pay Garland. You definitely don't want to pay OEL. We're taking this off your hand because you're a poverty franchise in Arizona. We're going to do this for you. You don't give them a first round pick as well. I think that's the only difference.
Well, I think from the Canucks perspective at the time, now the logic obviously failed miserably. They should have just waited the pain out. But remember that they were also able to at the same time get off Eriksson.
That's what I'm saying. So send those contracts and that's it.
Well, I mean, but then why? It's not in Arizona's mind at the time. They're not going to think that's fair value.
That's fair.
I mean, let's be honest. I would, if I was in Arizona's shoes, I wouldn't have said no to all that, because it's expensive to clear that much cap space, even if it is for only one season.
That's true. I mean, I guess maybe the reason this is being brought up also is because A, Garland's playing really well, but B, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's off to a pretty hot start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's playing top power play. He's playing in all sorts of roles for them. He's doing a really good job. And hey, we're happy to see that for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. It seems like Vancouver was kind of a blip on the radar for him. But again, you look back at that trade, and there was a second round pick in that as well. I guess what I'm saying is just like a second, a seventh, take some bad contracts, and then the Canucks get back Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Conor Garland. I don't know, like, if the Coyotes were just dealing Garland, they could have got more value, I think, at the time. But like, that felt like a trade that the Canucks were just competing with themselves. Like, it didn't feel like anybody else was making that trade in the league.
Maybe, but OEL also wasn't, like, people could tell he was on the decline. But and I, like, a lot of us in the media were warning, like, hey, like, he'd be a risky target. But there wasn't this perception that, oh, he's completely washed.
Yeah, you're gonna have to buy him out. Yeah, no, that wasn't a thing. That's fair. All right. Well, you definitely don't do the trade again. Let's at least say that. Of course, yeah. That was the original question. Okay, here we go. This one from Dean. We need a harm in quads bet that results in the loser having to buy the other a pirate pack at White Spot. Just saying. Harm, if you think of anything that you want to bet me against, we'll do the pirate pack bet.
Let's retroactively do that Mikheyev over under.
Retroactively? No, we're not doing that. We'll think of something. We'll think of something.
It'll organically, naturally happen when we do. Oh, like a Flames bet.
I'll bet on my Flames. I'll ride with my Flames tonight. Okay. You want to do it tonight? Penguins.
No,
Penguins.
Not like a single game bet. Come on.
Why?
Now. This
Why?
Is like
we'll literally know the answer tomorrow. I want White Spot.
You were talking about them being playoff competitive. So
I'm just gonna tell you now. I'm not waiting 7 months or 5 months, whatever it be. I'm not waiting that long.
You can buy yourself a pirate pack.
No,
this is just like,
I want it from you.
But see, okay, now
scared.
You're scared that your Flames aren't gonna last. Scared. So you want to make a single game bet.
I'll bet you 2 pirate packs. I'll bet you 2 pirate packs.
Flip. I'll bet you because you only want the short term bet. You don't actually believe in them.
No, I'm saying we'll do 1 bet for tonight's game.
I'm not betting for tonight's. Like,
sounds like you are.
Why could they not beat Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh's a pretty mediocre team.
Well, okay, I'm just telling you, I believe in my Wagon Flames. So we'll do your little thing. Flames are gonna make the playoffs, and when they do, you owe me a pirate pack. Okay, this is official. But we got to do something in the meantime. I'm not waiting 5 months for my pirate pack from you.
Yeah, but I'm not also doing like a single game bet. Like, I don't disagree with you if you say Calgary's going to beat Pittsburgh. I'm like, all right, okay. Like, Pittsburgh's not very good. Calgary's on a roll, sure.
Scared.
You all right? Okay, buddy.
This one from Jeremy Lee about our end of season bet. He said, "Easy meal for Hart."
Literally, like, thanks, man. I thought I'd at least have to be like, all right, if quads are right, I have to get you 2 pirate packs and whatever. But
no, one pirate pack. Car hop, folks, get out to White Spot. This one from Brippy Schwingle. We'll get to the chat here. On a scale of 0 to 5, how surprised are you that the Preds are 0-5? We kind of touched on this yesterday, Harm. That is probably the biggest surprise. Like, I guess you could call the Flames start a surprise, but like, to me, like, the Predators starting that poorly, like, we've seen bad teams, not that the Flames were a bad team, but like, we've seen teams that were projected to be bad have hot starts before. But like, the Preds starting 0-5, to me, like, that's a bigger surprise in my mind. Like, to me, that's a 5 on the scale.
Yeah, like that's a 4.5 or a 5. I wasn't necessarily sold on them as a Stanley Cup contender, but I
Sure.
thought they'd be like, look at them last season. They were a good team. They were hard out for the Canucks. Like it wasn't easy for the Canucks to eliminate Nashville. Go back to that crazy comeback game on the road. Was it game 4? The one where Brock Boeser just had that hat trick, that Elias Lindholm had the OT winner. There were Colton Sissons like that. If that post on the empty net had just gone in, that's potentially a completely different series. Now, of course, you could also say like the Canucks didn't have Thatcher Demko, and that's fair. But the point I'm trying to make is you had that team, and on top of that, like you add the pieces that they did in Marchessault and in Stamkos, and Shea in for McDonough out is kind of a wash. They're both pretty good top 4 caliber defensemen. But even with some of the young players that they have, like I expected that Evangelista would take a step. I thought Tomasino might take a step. I thought UC Saros might have a better season than he had last year. So yeah, I'm really surprised. I expected them to be right there as one of the better teams in the Western Conference. I definitely expected them to make the playoffs. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Central, and that's the other thing, is the Central is going to be an absolute bloodbath. The only team you can look at in that division and go, well, they're not going to make the playoffs is Chicago, because you've got like Winnipeg's off to a 5-0 start. Dallas is off to an electric start. They're always going to be good. Utah is a legit like playoff contender now, as far as in contention for a wild card spot, off to 4-1-1 start. Minnesota, for as bad as they were last year, they've been a consistent playoff team, and they haven't lost a game in regulation yet. Even the St. Louis Blues, they made some upgrades. Broberg's been a top 4 impact piece for them right away. They're off to a 4-2 start, and you still have Colorado and Nashville further down the standings who have struggled in the early going. Like the only team that's not going to be in the playoff mix is Chicago. So that Central Division is going to be pretty insane to watch.
Back to the Preds. Missing Kiefer Sherwood. Missing Kevin Lankinen. I was just scrolling through their DB page from last year. Kevin Lankinen had a better save percentage in the regular season than UC Saros. Played less games, but Lankinen had a 908. Saros had a 906. Saros, my Vezina pick for the year. Not off to the best start, but Harm, like, if we're trying to diagnose one thing, obviously it's the free agent signings. Like you wanted more from Steve Stamkos to start the year, March, so I get it. And sometimes you can say, okay, well, a lot of new additions, they have to mesh together. They got to find their footing. But like for me, like, yeah, you brought them up. Like, where's the step from Luke Evangelista? Like, where's the step from Tomasino? I'm looking at these guys, and maybe it's coming, but they were good last year. Like, they were legit good players last year, and you're just wanting a little bit more, I guess, from your young guys there.
Yeah, this is part of the reason that Tampa walked away from Stamkos, is that, yeah, he can score a ton of goals, and he is a weapon on that first power play unit. Tampa misses him there. The other day on the weekend, I believe it was, I saw Darren Radish in that Stamkos one-timer spot, and I was like, oh goodness, this Tampa power play is not, like, yeah, they still have Kucherov and Point and some dangerous pieces, but it's not the same. But at 5-on-5, Stamkos doesn't drive play anymore. He struggles defensively. The Lightning were, I believe, outshot, outchanced, outscored during Stamkos' 5-on-5 minutes last year. He's not the same player that he used to be. Like, yeah, his point totals and goals all look flashy, but Jake Gensel is a far, far superior player at 5-on-5. That's why the Lightning were willing to let Stamkos go, even though he had been their captain, the face of their franchise for so long. And so now Nashville's plopping him into the top 6, and it like they're thinking like, okay, we've got perhaps a second line now that can actually produce, because they were sort of a one-line offensive team last year. But at 5-on-5, Stamkos isn't actually like, yeah, he's a finisher, but he's not actually going to drive play. And you're still leaning on, like, this is a problem for them as far as their center depth. After O'Reilly, they just don't have enough, right? Sissons was technically their second line center in the playoffs last year. Tommy Novak is still an up and down player, not fully trusted defensively. So they don't have, like, Marchessault too. He's a scorer, but he's not really a play driver. And even just on the power play, like the compatibility of all these right shot scorers, like where do all the pieces fit? I'm not saying they're doomed necessarily, but I can understand, even though it's surprising, why it hasn't fully clicked right away.
All right. Final thing for me during today's Anyone Else Harm. Did you catch the Prime Monday Night Hockey last night?
No, I didn't.
Well, it's a good broadcast. So the quality's really good. Like, I think the commentators do a really good job. Even Mark Messier. No, mostly talking about the play-by-play commentary, of course. But the product's really good. Like, the product is really good, and we're seeing that shift to streaming. Curious how many games Amazon gets next time we're talking broadcast rights, but we'll save that for another day. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Amazon Prime. It's better than Sportsnet Plus. Like, I can watch all the games, and I haven't had any. Oh, this game that's being played in Vancouver actually isn't available in your region. Haven't had that yet. So Amazon Prime's immediately better than Sportsnet Plus. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Amazon Prime in these Prime Monday Night Hockey games. The user experience has been really good. I think they've done a really good job with the broadcasts themselves. The game aside, like, I just like the product that they're putting out, and I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the league. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up. Final thing. I guess you didn't watch this, so you don't have anything, but the final thing is Mark Messier is on location for all these games. First one for Vancouver, in Vancouver, December 23rd. All of the intermission panels are done, like, on the concourse. First of all, Rogers Arena's concourse probably isn't big enough to have a broadcast crew, but like in Rogers Arena, and Jacob, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but if you can go find this tweet from Dan Murphy, he replied to our pal Lachlan Irvin over on Canucks Army. If you can go find it, Jacob, it was really, really funny. Basically, Lachlan tweeted out and noted that all of those are on location, and he said, like, okay, how is Mark Messier going to get out of doing this? And Murph made a good point. Murph replied with the picture of the Pope Mobile. Do you remember the Pope Mobile?
No.
Okay, I just put it in our chat. Yeah, the Pope Mobile. So it's like it's not a bulletproof or anything like that, but it is a thing you roll in on.
Yeah, okay, I see the photo of it now.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's
Murph
funny.
Replied with that. Shout out to Dan Murphy, of course, friend of the show. But we'll see. Honestly, though, like, let's be serious. December 23rd, like, oh no, I'm taking holidays for Christmas. I'm sure that was decided pretty early on, right? That Mark Messier is not doing that game. We'll see. We'll see. All right. Good show today, bud. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365. Okay, we're not doing the 1 p.m. starts on Canucks game days anymore. And we're also not betting Canucks money line anymore, because since we've stopped doing both of those things, the Canucks are on a 2-game winning streak. They're looking for their third tonight, but that's not our bet of the day. Our bet of the day is the Wagon Calgary Flames to take down the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Flames are the favorite at home. You can get them at minus 120 odds over on Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. We will wrap it up there. We'll be back tomorrow in studio at the Wall Center to break down tonight's game. Enjoy the game, folks. 5:15 start for your Vancouver Canucks against the Chicago Blackhawks. Signing off, my name is Dave Gugelli. That is Harmadal, and our technical producer is Jacob Lazar. Thank you so much for listening to an episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.